Donald Trump fires U.S. Attorney General Sally Yates over her refusal to back immigration orders. Student charged with 6 counts of murder after Canada mosque massacre. And shades of missing booksellers as tycoon denies abduction from Hong Kong to the mainland.
Good evening. U.S. President Donald Trump has fired the country's acting attorney general. This after she defied the White House and refused to defend new travel restrictions targeting 7 Muslim-majority nations. It is the latest twist in the rocky rollout of Trump's sweeping immigration order. James Aiken begins our coverage.
After days of worldwide protests and chaos at airports, the federal government's top lawyer announced the Justice Department would not defend the executive order against a growing number of court challenges. Sally Yates said it would not be consistent with her department's obligation to stand for what's right. Hours later, she was fired. The White House said Yates' stand amounted to betrayal. Yates, who was appointed by the Obama administration, was days away from being replaced by Trump's pick 4 Attorney General, Republican Senator Jeff Sessions, who is awaiting Senate confirmation. Top Democrats are blasting the move.
She was fired because she would not pursue the executive order on the belief that it was illegal, perhaps unconstitutional. It was a profile in courage. It was a brave act. And a right act. How can you run a country like this?
Trump complained that the Senate is holding up his cabinet nominations and accused Schumer of producing fake tears.
There's about a 5% chance that it was real, but I think they were fake tears.
Dana Bente, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, has taken Yates' place. She's already rescinded Yates' previous directive. One analyst says the decision to axe an attorney general is often political as much as it is legal.
But it hasn't gone that well in the past when it's happened, and is only going to, among opponents of the president's order, increase the sense that this is out of law in some way.
In 1973, the Attorney General and his deputy resigned rather than obey President Richard Nixon's order to fire a special prosecutor investigating the Watergate scandal. The so-called Saturday Night Massacre was a public relations disaster that became a turning point in the Nixon administration. James Aiken, TVB News.
Meanwhile, the backlash continues to build against President Trump's travel restrictions. In Britain, the Prime Minister's office said a state visit by Trump later this year will go ahead, despite increasing calls for it to be canceled. Alan Booknia has that story.
In New York, protesters gathered outside a church where a Syrian refugee family of 8 was supposed to arrive, but was prevented from coming because of Trump's executive order.
And on Friday, we got the executive order. On that same day, which was Holocaust Remembrance Day, they issued a statement not mentioning Jews or anti-Semitism. The bigots worked overtime on Friday in the White House.
The executive order also meant people from the countries affected, who have the right to live and work in America, had to undergo extensive screening on arrival in the U.S. The White House downplayed that.
You talk about in a 24-hour period, 325,000 people from other countries flew in through our airports, and we're talking about 109 people from 7 countries that the Obama administration identified. This is about the safety of America.
Several lawsuits have been filed challenging the validity of Trump's executive order. Washington's Attorney General became the first state Attorney General to announce legal action.
This lawsuit is different and broader in scope. It seeks to have key provisions of that executive order declared illegal and unconstitutional. In other words, if successful, this would have the effect of invalidating the president's unlawful action nationwide.
Meanwhile, in Britain, several thousand people gathered near Prime Minister Theresa May's residence, protesting against a planned state visit by Donald Trump. More than 1.5 million signed an online petition opposing the trip. But during a visit to Ireland, May said the invitation would not be withdrawn.
Look, the United States is a close ally of the United Kingdom. We work together across many areas of mutual interest, and we have that special relationship between us. I have issued that invitation, informally issued that invitation for a state visit for President Trump here to the United Kingdom, and that invitation stands.
But the furor over the travel ban has tarnished what British officials considered a highly successful trip to Washington by May last week. Alan Brooknier, TVB News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said today he hopes to convince Donald Trump of the benefits that Japanese automakers bring to the American economy when they meet next month. Abe was addressing the Japanese parliament that's concerned over a flurry of Trump's America First policies. Finance Minister Taro Aso said Trump poses an extreme source of uncertainty for Japan's economy. Trump unnerved Japanese business leaders last week when he criticized Japan for making it difficult for U.S. automakers to sell cars in their market. He also threatened Toyota with a big border tax if it goes ahead with plans to build a new Mexican auto plant. Abe is scheduled to visit Washington on February 10th. A French-Canadian man has been arrested as the sole suspect in the deadly shooting rampage at a mosque in Canada. As Canadians held a vigil to honor the victims, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau consoled a nation in mourning. 27-year-old Alexander Bissonnette is the man suspected of gunning down a group of Muslims praying at a Quebec City mosque Sunday night. The shooting left 6 men dead and 5 others critically injured. Bissonnette has been charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. Bissonnette is a French-Canadian student who is studying political science at Laval University. While the motive for the shooting remains unknown, many who knew Bissonnette labeled him a far-right fanatic. Local activists say he espoused support for the French far-right party of Marine Le Pen. On his Facebook profile, he expressed support for Génération Nationale, a group whose manifesto includes the rejection of multiculturalism. He also stated he liked U.S. President Donald Trump and Canadian politician Jack Layton, the former leader of the official opposition and New Democratic Party. Meantime, the Prime Minister attended a vigil with hundreds of Canadians to mourn those who died in what he called a terrorist attack on the Muslim religion. Justin Trudeau, who's made a point of welcoming refugees and immigrants from Muslim-majority countries, spoke directly to the more than 1 million Muslims living in Canada.
Last night's horrible crime against the Muslim community was an act of terror committed against Canada and against all Canadians. We will grieve with you, we will defend you, we will love you, and we will stand with you.
U.S. President Donald Trump called Trudeau to express condolences and offer assistance. The White House pointed to the attack as a terrible reminder of why Trump's travel ban affecting 7 majority Muslim nations is needed. Authorities in New York aren't taking any chances. They enhanced security outside all mosques following the attack in Quebec City.
Here in Hong Kong, the police say they're following up on reports that a mainland businessman was taken across the border by security agents against his will. The tycoon has denied he was abducted, but local investigators have contacted their mainland counterparts to try to get to the bottom of the claims. Anne-Marie Sim reports.
Xiao Jianhua, the founder of the Beijing-based Tomorrow Group, posted a statement on the company's WeChat account on Sunday, saying he was recuperating from an illness abroad and was fine. Xiao also denied he'd been abducted, adding that he loved his country and would never do anything to harm it. He also claimed that because he was a Hong Kong resident as well as a Canadian citizen, he was protected by both jurisdictions. The post was later removed and the Tomorrow Group website was down. The group's businesses include securities, banking and insurance. Xiao was responding to online reports circulating over the weekend that an unnamed billionaire had been taken by mainland police and state security agents from Hong Kong on Friday night in connection with an anti-graft operation. Local police confirmed receiving a request for assistance report concerning a mainland citizen in Hong Kong, but did not name the person involved. It said initial investigations found that the person had crossed a border checkpoint into the mainland on Friday and that mainland authorities have been asked to follow up. Investigators added that a relative had asked to withdraw the report on Sunday, saying the person had been contacted and was safe. Reports of the tycoon's alleged abduction from Hong Kong has raised concerns of a repeat of the high-profile disappearance of 5 Causeway Bay booksellers in 2015. They later turned up in the custody of mainland authorities. As it did during the booksellers' disappearances, the Security Bureau reiterated that under the Basic Law, law enforcement officers from outside Hong Kong are not allowed to enforce the law here. Anne-Marie Sim, TVB News.
Election committee members have listed out the various issues they would like the next chief executive to address. They stress they will not decide who to vote for until they learn more about the candidates' election platforms. Evelina Lung reports.
Rural body Hernyu Kok, which holds more than 20 election committee places, earlier said it is inclined to vote for former Chief Secretary Carrie Lam. Today, the Kok chairman, Kenneth Lau, said his group will meet with the CE candidates tomorrow, except for retired Judge Wu Kuo-heng, to learn more about their election platforms. Wu says he will meet the Kok at a later date. Lau said members are waiting to see what policies the candidates propose in relation to the new territories. When asked whether tomorrow's meetings could change the Kok's mind about voting for Lam, Lau said it all depends on the candidates' proposed policies. Meanwhile, the largest political party in Leshko spoke about its expectations for the next chief executive. The pro-establishment Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong said it wants the next CE to defend one country, two systems and fight against Hong Kong independence. DAB members also want the CE to implement Article 23 of the Basic Law, which covers national security in a suitable manner, and restart the political reform process. The party stressed it hasn't decided who to vote for. The DAB will meet with the 4 candidates starting from Saturday. And what else is on the agenda? Carrie Lam will meet with the Federation of Trade Unions on Thursday and with the Democratic Party next week. Regina Ip will meet with the Civic Party next Tuesday. Meanwhile, Wu Kuo-heng showed up at the Hong Kong Stadium to watch the Lunar New Year Cup today. Speaking to the press, he called on people not to speculate whether he will get enough nominations to enter the CE race. Lam and Ip did not make any public appearances today. Former finance chief John Tsang, meanwhile, wrote on his blog that he is working hard on his election platform. Evelina Lang, TVB News.
And coming up after the break, criticism of proposal to raise fees for emergency services amid rising demand at public hospitals. Exercises to tackle pain from excessive smartphone use. And counting down to the Super Bowl.
Welcome back. A new survey has found that many residents are opposed to plans to raise fees for emergency services at public hospitals. But as Adam Shu reports, the hospital authority insists it needs to raise fees to deter people from misusing accident and emergency services.
With private clinics off during the Lunar New Year holiday, public hospitals have had to take up the workload. For non-urgent patients seeking accident and emergency services at Queen Elizabeth Hospital, the longest waiting time this morning was 6 hours. Hospital Authority recorded more than 6,000 requests for A&E services at the city's public hospitals yesterday. That was almost 50% higher than on Saturday. About 1,000 patients were then transferred to medicine wards, leaving no beds available at United Christian, Princess Margaret and Yanchai hospitals in the early hours of today. During a visit to Tuen Mun Hospital, Hospital Authority Chief Executive Leung Pak-yin warned that emergency facilities would be even more crowded when people return from holiday tomorrow. He urged the public to choose private clinics that will have been reopened by then. With an average of 65% of A&E patients classified as non-urgent, the authority is planning to raise A&E charges from $100 to $220 to curb the overuse of emergency services. That would also free up staff to attend to general outpatient duties. But a recent survey by Federation of Trade Unions of some 1,400 people found 64% were against an increase by the amount proposed. And 67% believed raising fees is not the best solution. The party suggests increasing the value of the elderly health care voucher, which stands at $2,000 a year, so as to make private medical services more affordable. It also called for expanding health care within the community. Acting Secretary for Food and Health, Sylvia Chan, insisted the proposed fee hike is only one option to ease demand on A&E services. Others include increasing the number of general outpatient clinics. Adam Xu, TVB News.
A group of medical students have warned of health problems from prolonged use of electronic devices. They've actually come up with different exercises to tackle muscular pains. Our Elmi Leung takes a closer look.
For many people in this city, smartphones are never out of their hands or sight.
It's not really a good habit, I would say.
I always hold the phone on the same side of my head. I don't use this here, I use this one. You get an ache in your shoulder or in your neck, so you become a little bit of discomfort, but it's not a major medical issue at the moment, but you never know over time.
That's the message these medical students hope to drive home. They were in Causeway Bay to raise awareness on smartphone-related neck strain or finger pain, which, if ignored, might require surgery in serious cases.
About 70% of adult population and 30% of teenage population in Hong Kong actually have smartphone-related musculoskeletal problems.
And here's how you can detect these problems.
Put both of your thumbs into your fingers and wrap around it. And then you do this direction to the floor. And if you feel there's some tension or even pain over this thumb tendon area, that means potentially there is a problem of deeper veins disease.
Or try this empty can test to see if you suffer from shoulder impingement syndrome. All it takes then is just an easy neck stretch to relax the muscles. Other exercises can be found on the group's social media account.
It couldn't get any easier. No fitness equipment is required, and the students say they chose simple stretches with advice from physiotherapists. So there really isn't any excuse not to stretch. Elmi Leung, TVB News.
Heavy smog continues to engulf cities on the mainland. Serious air pollution was recorded in more than 120 locations last Friday and Saturday. Villagers in Jiangxi province were in for a real shock when they saw snow of this color. Crops were also layered with carbon black, which locals suspect was caused by pollution from nearby factories. Local authorities say one of the reasons of air pollution is the use of fireworks over the holidays.
Italian police have busted a criminal network that smuggled migrants packed into vans across the border with France for about $1,000 US each. 34 arrests have been, arrest warrants have been issued in Italy, France, and Germany against the organization, which was based in Egypt. Investigators say the gang had operated for several years. A Milan prosecutor said in one case, police discovered 40 migrants crammed into the back of a van that had been padlocked shut. She said they were having trouble breathing.
With more than 60 wildfires burning out of control in Chile, President Michelle Bachelet has called for international aid. Firefighters are battling the blazes around the clock. They currently have 7,000 people assigned to that duty. They've also deployed 44 airplanes and helicopters to douse flames from the air. The fast-moving fires have killed 11 people so far and ravaged more than 1,000 homes. An estimated 500,000 hectares of land has been destroyed. Over in Dakota region, at least 800 families were evacuated from their homes after a menacing fire also erupted there. Right. And that is a wrap of our news.
Good night.